Alright, what's up guys? So my last video I dropped where I was talking about FL Studio not really supporting hardware gear and FL Studio not being so smooth with using hardware gear. I feel like a couple of people probably misunderstood that video, and at the same time I feel like that video might have come off as a form of misinformation. So let me point that out again just to make everything clear, right? FL Studio supports hardware gear. You can use hardware gear in FL Studio, but however, it's not as smooth as say a DAW like Ableton or a DAW like Cubase or a DAW like Reaper. The main reason is because of the real-time exporting. If you're trying to do stuff in real time, if you're trying to export stuff in real time, you might have to bounce out the audio in your DAW first, then you can now do the full export. Apparently, some people prefer working that way, and at the same time, I see how that workflow might also be a pain to work like that. Let's be honest, a lot of us don't have hardware gear. A lot of us never really got to use hardware gear. We've just been working in the box, and there's also a reason why a lot of people stopped using hardware gear and switched over to plugins. I know, and now some people are trying to pick up hardware gear like myself, trying to compare from the plugin world. So there are a lot of advantages with plugins, and there are a lot of disadvantages with hardware gear, and vice versa, however you want to put it. With plugins, if you have different tracks, say your kick, your snare, your vocals, you can add your compressors, different compressors on those different channels. You can add the compressor on your kick, you can add another compressor on your snare, you can add the compressor on your vocals. Say with any other effect you have, maybe reverb or any other plugins you have, you can add those independently on every single channel. But say you want to use hardware gear, you want to add a compressor to your snare, which might have a different setting to do compressor on your kick, or you want to add a compressor on your vocal, which will have a different setting on your drum bus, and you only have one compressor. So now you probably need to get 3 different compressors to effect 3 different tracks. That might also be a disadvantage. Why do I have to buy 3 compressors? So some people would then be forced to render all those effects on the kick, on the vocals, and on the snare. Say you want to do like a drum bus, or you wanted to do like a vocal bus, or you just wanted to add a compressor to like a vocal chain, and you wanted to go through your hardware compressor and then back into your DAW. That was what I actually meant, the real-time processing. Say you just wanted to do like a real-time export with your settings on, and you don't want to bounce the audio first, then have to bounce it again. Apparently, it seems like a lot of people do it that way in other DAWs, but at the same time, there's also a support for you to actually use your external effects as a plugin in other DAWs like Ableton. But in FL Studio, it's not like that. You basically have to do all the routing in your DAW, and after you're done with all your routing, then you can probably use something like Edison. And if you use Edison, that's when you pretty much get like a real-time export. But you cannot use your external effects like a VST plugin in FL Studio. That's not possible. From my own personal research and from what I've seen, and that can be a pain in the ass, because say I just wanted to run my master bus through my compressor, I would have to render that in my DAW. But if I just wanted to do real-time exporting, if you come to file, if you go to exports, there's nothing for real-time exporting here. But if you have a DAW like Ableton, right, you can load up what we call external audio effects, which is basically loading your hardware like a VST plugin, and you can choose your inputs and your outputs, and then you have recording. And then when you go to file, export audio, and you click on export, it's going to give you a real-time rendering, and it's going to go through your external effects and export it back to MP3 and WAV. I'll show you guys more of that later. If you're using something like Reaper, you can set up your audio going from your audio interface to your external effects and back to your audio interface using something called reinsert. And when you do an export, I think Reaper 2 is kind of different. Reaper, you can do something called bounce live. I'll show you guys. And you can load up reinsert. Then you can set like your analog input and your analog output. So I'm going to choose my hardware send to 5 and 6. And if you go to file and you go to save live outputs to disk, then that's basically like the same real-time exports in Reaper. Just got to make sure all your settings are properly set here. Save and stop, all that stuff. You can set all this out, so it's kind of easy for you while you're doing your real-time exports. And it's going to go through your external effect or external gear. It's basically different in every DAW, but it exists. I'm going to show you how it is in Cubase. If you have Cubase, you can basically do the same thing in Cubase. You just go to Studio and you go to Audio Connections and see External Effects. You can basically set up your external effects like a plugin. You just choose your inputs and your outputs. And when you're done, let's say you load up an audio track, and I call this, go to external plugins. Whatever you routed can be loaded at an external effect, and boom, you have that working in place. And then when you're trying to export, you go to File, Export, Audio Mixdown. Then once you check real-time exports, you basically have that real-time exporting. You don't have to bother with, bouncing it in Cubase before you now actually do the real bounce. But like I said, that workflow too might not really be the best. Adding those effects to different channels, say your kicks, say your snares, say your vocals. If you're going to do different processing on all of that, not like a bus processing, then you might definitely need to do your bouncing back in your DAW before you now do your final rendering. If that makes any sense. But I'll show you guys what I mean in FL Studio and Ableton. But before I show you guys, let me show you guys the way my routing is. So over here, I have my audio interface, my RME UCX Mark II, which has about 20 ins and 20 outs. But even with the 20 ins and 20 outs, physically, right now, I only have about 6 outs and 8 ins. So my output. So I already have 4 outputs to my studio monitors, and I only have 2 outputs free, which I plug to my VLA2 compressor, which is the gray and purple cable. It's plugged into my VLA compressor here. If you can see the output, so it's very, very messy back here. So guys, don't mind all this mess. But you can see my inputs here for left and right. It's plugged into my outputs from here on my audio interface. The other, if I wanted to expand my inputs, I'd probably have to get another audio interface, like maybe Behringer AD200 or 2000, and connect it to ADAT, or I can use the SPDIF and the AES. That's a whole bunch of stuff, so that's for later. So that's just to understand the context of where my stuff is routed, right? My compressor, which is a stereo compressor, the outs of my audio interface is going into my VLA, and from my VLA, the outputs are coming back to my 3 and 4 on my audio interface, basically, so if that makes any sense. So I'm going to switch over to my DAW and show you guys more examples on this. So first I'm going to open up FL Studio, and I'm also going to open up Ableton just to make it make more sense. So we have this song. I'm going to open up this vocal channel, and this is a beats channel, right? So I'm just going to play it. Sounds like this. Si tú no sabes, mami, lo que tú quieres. Okay, so say I want to now use my audio compressor on this vocal channel alone, or maybe on the beat. I'll have to basically render the audio in FL Studio first before I can now actually do a full export. But say I wanted to use my compressor and just export it from there to my WAV or MP3 without having to render it in FL Studio first. That's where the problem comes. There's no real-time export, like I said. There's no live processing or live export in FL Studio. So that's one of the things I meant to say in my last video. I'll come to my mixer channel. I'll make an outs and an ins. So my outs is basically anything I want to go to my compressor. I'll just call it outs to compressor, so it makes more sense. Outs to compressor. I'll make it red or brown, whatever this color says. And I'll press OK. And I'm going to make one ins from compressor. Okay. And I'll actually color it blue. Then accept that. Then so basically from here, the first thing you want to do is mute the master channel, because you don't want it to route to the master channel. You want it to route to the compressor channel. So the compressor channel is already set to 5 and 6 outputs from my audio interface, like I showed you guys in the beginning. So I'm going to choose 5 and 6 here, and my input is my 3 and 4 in the front. So I'm going to choose 3 and 4, and I'm going to press no. So you can probably already start hearing that buzz if possible. I'm going to reduce my output level on here. And then when I play the vocal, you can see there's some compression going on the VLA. Increase it. So this is basically a lot of compression going on. Si tú no sabes, mami, lo que tú quieres, entonces llama de madrugada. me just do like a bunch of crazy compression so you guys can actually hear the difference. No, basically you might not do a compression like this, you know, but now I want to export this to MP3 or WAV. How do I do that? So that's where the problem comes in. So I basically have to either use Edison to record this. So I'll come in here, and this can be kind of annoying because say I want to do something, I have to first record to Edison and drag it back to a DAW. Or I mean, you can just do this, make a new channel. We'll just call this track mode, ins from compressor, and we'll just record that. So basically we've recorded that from the compressor, and funny enough, a lot of people seem to work this way. I'm just gonna route this to an empty track. That's the only way to actually use hardware gear in FL Studio. You have to bounce and do the recording back and forth. And like I said, a lot of people work this way. And if this is how you work, no shame in that, no crime with that. But say I wanted to do real-time export, so like what I said already, you basically just have to maybe say use Edison. Let's click on Edison here, MISC, then load up Edison, and then you just make sure you click on play, and I'm just gonna press record and press play. You guys basically get the point. I can now drag this back in, or I can say from Edison, I can just export this to my song. I can just do export. Or I can just save sample as, and then I export to MP3 or WAV. So using Edison is the only way you can actually do a real-time export in FL Studio. And I'm going to save this. Let's go to Ableton, which kind of makes a little bit more sense than FL Studio, which is kind of easier, in my opinion. In here, I have the same thing I've done with the same beats. So basically, I'll just come in here. And I want to add some hardware gear on there. I could basically just come in here and add the external audio effect and come in here. And then if I choose my outputs, 5 and 6, and my inputs, 3 and 4, and I press play. So if I was going to export this, if I click on export audio video, and I just choose export, and then maybe I call it Yama Boss as the name of the song, and I press save. I already have the track there because I tried to do an example before, but I'll just press yes. And then you're going to see this come up, which is going to do a real-time export. Then you're also going to hear a playback while you're exporting it to MP3 or WAV, which is like way easier. So when you've done the exports, you know, you basically have that to MP3 here. With the compressed audio. You know, that's way easy on Ableton, right? The only thing that I failed to say was just the real-time export, which FL Studio doesn't have. I mean, it kind of has it, but you know, that workflow, that dragging, exporting, editing, I feel like this video is kind of pointless now because it kind of counters what I said before. But yeah. With everything being said, at the end of the day, what is most important is your workflow. Whether you want to use FL Studio, whether you want to use Cubase, whether you want to use Ableton, Logic, Reaper, at the end of the day, it's your workflow that's king. Forget about everything I've said. If it doesn't apply to you, then it's all good. Not everybody uses hardware gear. Like I said, I'm just trying to get my hands dirty into using hardware gear. That's why I got my SP. That's why I also got this compressor, just to see what it feels like. There's no crime in trying out stuff. Some people have been saying a lot of stuff about FL Studio. I still feel FL Studio is a great DAW, regardless of everything everybody else has said. Maybe like, the mixing, all that stuff is all controversial. There's no better DAW. There's no one DAW that mixes better than the other DAW. Everything is also how you hear stuff. Your studio monitors. People that buy gear, they're not dumb. People that buy hardware stuff, they're not also dumb. Yes, there are some trash hardware gear that you shouldn't buy. And yes, there are some stuff that you shouldn't do, like treating your room if you don't have a well-treated space. A lot of other stuff is going to affect your mix at the end of the day. Your recording is going to affect your mix at the end of the day. Your beats is going to affect your mix at the end of the day. There are people that have $1,000 studios or $1,000,000 studios, and they don't get good outputs because they don't know what they're doing. And there are people that only have a laptop, and they walk in the box and their mixes sound better than anything you can pull out from an expensive studio. So don't let any of this I've said make you feel some kind of way. I'm not trying to hate. Like I said, I love FL Studio so much. I've used FL Studio more than any other DAW that I have. Even recording, sometimes I find myself recording in FL Studio, and I've been basically just trying to integrate all my gear I bought to my workflow. And I'm probably not always going to use it every time, but when I want to use it, I want to be sure that I know how to use it properly. And with that being said, I think I'm going to call this video a wrap. See you guys on the next one. So all you guys that left a comment on my last video, thank you guys for leaving your comments. I really appreciate every single one of you guys. No hate, no controversy, none of that. I'm not trying to hate nothing. That's all.